All right. Welcome to another weekly edition of the Late Late Show. And I'm here with my co host, as always, faithfully, weekly. Thank you guys, Cody, and
I
my
have to be here.
and my wife Lindsay. She has to be here, yeah.
I guess
but
technically I do too, because I'm the one that creates the room and hits the go live button.
yeah, you
Yeah,
kind of got
otherwise it
roped
would
into
just
that,
be you and
so
me watching movies and talking about
yeah.
them. And nobody would know about it.
pretty much. But anyway, thank you for being here. If you're watching, or if anybody decides to watch, I always joke about our tens of listeners, but we are diving into Tolkien November, and last week we discussed unexpected journey and desolation of Smog. Um, which I love both of them. They're both great. They do have their flaws, but not enough to really dampen the movies in any way, in my opinion. But we did talk about them. So this week or tonight, we're going to talk about the Battle of Five Armies and get into uh, what is, in my opinion, the greatest motion picture trilogy of all time. And I will go so far as to say a it is a rare perfect trilogy, and we will get into that. And Cody, I know you have some thoughts on that, about why that is, and so do I. But basically, we're going to get through Battle of Five Armies, which it does have a few flaws.
It seems so mean that we're like, we're going to slog through this other
Yeah.
stuff so we can get to the part we like.
No.
Well, this is funny because we are discussing my least favorite and my absolute favorite film of the whole Middle Earth saga. Like today we're
Yeah.
talking.
Look, I don't want to. I have to say it's probably my least favorite out of the three. I love the action scenes. I thought the battle sequence between the five armies and the way everything goes down was cool. Um, but we'll get into one of my beefs towards the end, because that's when the major beef, I think, takes place. It was a major sin, I thought, and it was along the lines of Clark not saving Paul Kent from the tornado in the Superman movie.
You know, not to get on that tangent, but I actually don't hate Man of Steel. I'm probably one of the few people that defends that film that's not a Snyder bro.
I,
But that is the most infuriating scene in the movie for me because it's like Superman totally could have saved him. It's not
yeah,
the same as in
that's
the Richard Donner movie where Jonathan dies of a heart attack because Superman can't stop him from having a heart attack. He could totally save him from a tornado.
right. That's my thoughts exactly. That was my biggest. I remember watching that and I was like, "What the hell?" I mean, he could have saved him. A heart attack. You can't save him from a heart attack. Come on. It was more touching when he died in his arms, and not like, oh man, I'm gonna get swept away in the winds of an Oklahoma or a Smallville tornado. I mean, it was very lackluster. But anyway, back to Battle of Five Armies. So we watched the extended R rated version of this movie,
Is
which
that rated R? That extended?
it is.
You made our kids watch
It was rated R, but it really, come on, animated. I chalk it up to animated violence. Oh, and because I go off track really easily, before we get started, um, I'm drinking some ale this evening, some beer in my horned mug, because we do like to drink on this late show, especially after we put our kids to bed, after work. We're tired, but we still want to talk about movies, and we got to have a little nightcap. We gotta enjoy. So,
You have to when you're talking about Middle Earth.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Cody, are you drinking anything this evening?
Yeah, I'm drinking a Blue Moon.
Nice. Excellent brand. I love Blue Moons.
I'm drinking the real adult beverage, which is water, because I'm dehydrated.
Well, we drank wine last week, and I decided to get some beer this week. I was like, man, I want some liquid bread. But anyway, back to
liquid
Battle of
bread.
5 Armies. Now again, this film is enjoyable. I like it. The beef that I had in Desolation of Smog is one of the two beefs I have in this movie, and it's the whole love triangle.
Are you gonna hate on love, Christopher?
Look, I did not hate Toriel. She was a badass character. She was a kick-ass.
She could have been a really cool character that wasn't in the books.
I didn't mind that she wasn't in the
didn't
books.
have anything to do
Yeah,
with...
I didn't mind that she wasn't in the books. She played the Arwen role in this film. I didn't mind that, but it was just unnecessary, and it plays into the beef that I have at the end of the movie. It was unnecessary, and it made... Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and say it. Okay. And then Cody, I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna give you a chance to speak, and I'm sorry I'm jumping forward, but the beef that I had for these two movies are connected to the major sin. Okay. And the major sin was Philly and Killy not dying in battle protecting Thorin like it happened in the book. They go off, they separate, which they would not have done. I believe that they would not have gone off from this major battle.
Well, that's because we have this whole side plot with the orc beef with Thorin and all that, which is not in the book.
The orc, they could have... that I would have been fine with that, but the orc should have met him in battle, and he could have still killed Philly and Killy, but done it like in the middle of the battlefield. You know how they do it. They'll have a space where they're fighting, and everybody else around them is fighting, and they automatically have this arena this magic arena that they're
the fight arena,
the Thunderdome that nobody's getting into, and the good guy and the bad guy duke it out.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Where all the bad guys take their turns getting their heads chopped off. It's very, very civilized. There are special fighting rules.
Yeah, it was unnecessary.
That just reminded me, Lindsay's joke reminded me, I don't know if you guys ever watched it, but there was a very short-lived Amazon series with Jean-Claude Van Damme where he was actually a spy, and like him being a movie star was a cover. And there's a scene where he's fighting the guys, and they're all like, no, fight him one at a time.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw the trailer for it, but we never watched it. Like, I never got around to it. It looked pretty funny.
I appreciate bad guys who take turns.
Yeah. But
it's very polite.
But yeah, that was my look. Out of the whole trilogy, I know that they kind of switched things around. They moved characters out of history and moved them to certain places and yada yada yada. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with the pacing. I'm okay with there being 3 movies. But the whole love triangle with the elf and the dwarf, and then at the end, them not dying in battle protecting Thorin. I think that would have meant a lot more and would have felt a lot more personal to me. And because they all split up, and none of their deaths made any sense by the end of this.
Splitting up is always a bad idea in movies. It always leads to the worst possible
and
events.
Like that, everything that they went through, the first 2 movies and the first part of this movie, and him getting over his dragon sickness and the love he had for his nephews, and the way that they died just did not fit the narrative of this trilogy at all. And I did feel that was a little lackluster As big a fan as I am of these movies, and as much as I am willing to overlook, because I do love these movies, that right there, every time I watch it year after year, it just stands out to me, and I just, it doesn't diminish my love for the trilogy or this franchise. I mean, I'm still going to go back to it, and I'm going to watch it, and I'm going to enjoy it. But it's just one of those things that always sticks out in my mind. Like, it just didn't make sense to me. Like the love triangle, and then at the end where Toriel is holding is it
It's an Ely.
Ely? It's one of them, and they're having their love, like
there's got to be
it wasn't deep enough to like really.
If there's Feely, there should be Mealy and then Keely.
Yeah,
it's fuck, marry, kill is the game.
Yeah, it didn't have any feeling to me. And I'll be quiet, Cody, because I've gone on this long tangent.
Cody has thoughts. I can see them behind his hand and his glasses.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Cody, because these movies, look, we're fixing to get deep, okay? Especially when we get to Fellowship, okay? So if you butt in. You're going to have to butt in.
Just interrupt.
Okay, so this is my least favorite, not of just the Hobbit movies, but of the whole Middle-earth saga. I do like it more now that I've watched it more. And oddly, watching the extended edition, because one of my biggest complaints when I saw it in the theaters was like, wow, did they bloat the crap out of this third act of the book to make an over 2-hour movie?
They did, but I don't mind. Most of it is action and battle scenes, which I don't mind, because I like to see dwarves getting their head,
Well, that's the formula.
Getting smashed with hammers, and
this is the battle movie. This is where you get to see
big
masses of bodies just crushing at each other with cool weapons and stuff.
I will say that the smog sequence should have been the end of the previous film instead of the beginning of this movie.
Yep.
Yeah,
but it is what it is.
They could have done that and then just picked up right as they're washing up on shore, and it would have been just fun.
Yeah, it would have been fine. I love seeing legendary Scottish comedian Bill Conley riding a pig. That was great.
Yes.
With cute little matching beard tusks.
Dane Ironfoot, man.
I thought he didn't even have to show up. Like he did all his stuff separately.
They put him in makeup and it just didn't work. So they did the composite. Like I think they just did his face in makeup.
And then just put it on a little
and then
body.
Composited the rest of it. He didn't have to go full John Rhys Davis, it was his was just facial makeup, like head makeup, and then digital.
I will say, watching this yesterday and then watching Fellowship today, the little hints that they hint doesn't bother as much because you're like, oh, I'm about to watch Fellowship. But
yeah.
Seeing it in the theater, I'm like, oh, come on. I don't need a reference to Aragon and all these things that I already know that's going to happen.
That's because we're fans, and I guarantee you there were a lot of non-fans that came on board this time that were going to go back and watch
our kids
Lord of the Rings
back and forth.
Yeah.
Oh, that's part of the story.
Yeah, and so I could see them. I see why they did it, but I can also see why, as a fan, we didn't really need to see that. But I noticed he did that in Lord of the Rings too. With Isildur cutting the ring off of Sauron's finger, you see that recap a bunch just replayed. So he did that with The Hobbit too. So,
but my overall insight into all three of these movies is they're enjoyable, they're entertaining. It's just going back to the world of Middle Earth, and if you like that, great. But I think the Hobbit trilogy is more for fans whereas I think the Lord of the Rings is a little more accessible for anyone. So the people who don't like the Hobbit trilogy, I understand why they don't like it, but I don't think it's anywhere as bad. And I know you're a prequel defender, but I don't think the Hobbit trilogy gets anywhere as bad as the prequels get.
No. There's, like I said, everything that look. There is the stuff that he pulls from the appendices compared to the stuff that is made up for story's sake greatly outnumbers the made up stuff. Like he really tries to keep it
to treat it with
in
care.
universe, even if it is pulling like Azog pulling him from another story that happened way earlier and inserting him as the bad guy here and bringing up the whole thing with the necromancer actually being Sauron trying to recruit wanting to recruit Smaug. Thank you, man. Thank you for reading my mind.
Oh,
So
that's another one. Another little hint where Saruman's like, leave Sauron to me. I'm like, okay, Saruman. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's nice.
Well, see, that's the whole thing. That's where he got too cocky, and he was like, I can,
Even in Fellowship, there's a moment where Gandalf's like, oh my gosh, you won't believe who's back. And Saruman's like, oh my gosh, tell me. But he has this creepy look on his face.
Yeah.
And his smile just gets bigger and bigger. And it's like so obvious what's about to happen now that when you see that moment in The Hobbit, you're like, okay.
Yep.
Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. We get it.
Oh, that reminds me too. So at the end of the Battle of Five Armies, Gandalf's like, yeah, I know you got a magic ring. And then when he's talking to Saruman in Fellowship, he's like, I didn't know it was there the whole time. It's like, but you did, Gandalf.
Well, look, I think he knew that he had. I think he knew that he had a magic ring because he said there are many magic rings in this world, but he didn't know that it was the ring because up until then, that ring had been lost. Like nobody knew where it was. So that's why in Fellowship he goes to Minas Tirith, and that's what he's digging in the libraries and he's reading on the histories, and he's like, okay. So this has got to be the ring. This has got to be the one ring. And he goes back, he rides back to the Shire. And keep in mind, they don't specify it in the movie, but Gandalf was gone for like 60 years. Like Gandalf was gone for a really long time, like digging up info and researching and trying to find out if this was the one ring. So when he gets
hyper focused, that 60 years was.
Yeah, well, it's, and I'm sure there was lots of other stuff going on too, but.
Well, you're Gandalf. You get into shenanigans. Every time somebody in Lord of the Rings sees Gandalf, they all know him and they all have this look on their face like, oh, that guy.
Yeah. Because in book, Bilbo is 60 years old already.
Boy, he looks good for 60.
Yeah. So he's not as young as
I want to age like a hobbit.
Right?
Please.
Well, apparently
it's because
he does.
You have to rest and you have to enjoy good things and treat yourself to all the comforts that you can. That's what slows down the aging process.
Right.
That's why certain rich people look nice at their age.
But yeah, anyway, so all this time goes by. He comes back, and that's when he's like, he puts it in the fire and he holds it out to him, and he's like, oh, it's quite cool. So he catches it and he's like, can you see any markings at all? And he's like, no, I don't see anything. And he has that sigh of relief, like, okay, God, this is not we didn't want that. Let's, that was bad news.
Like a negative pregnancy test.
And
He
then,
was like, woo, we're not the daddy.
Yeah.
And then
and then that other faint bar comes into view, and those words come up, and he's like, "Oh shit," like, yeah, son of a nutcracker. So, yeah, I mean, that's when crap hits the fan, and he's like, "Man, okay, we've got to get this out of here. You need to go somewhere safe and onward to Rivendell." But anyway, man. I remember exactly where I was, what night it was, what I was doing, who I was with, what movie we went and saw, where I saw the teaser trailer for this movie.
Wait.
Okay, so we're moving straight into Fellowship.
No, we're not. No.
Okay. Let's go back.
These are very superficial things, but I wrote them down, so I'm going to say them.
Go ahead.
Okay. I don't know what happened between Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit as far as like contacts and eye color technology, but Legolas's eyes trip me out for the whole Hobbit series because they're almost like zombie ice blue white. And he almost has no eyebrows, I guess, because he's like extra pale and blonde in these movies. So he looks like he's always staring like as wide-eyed as possible. But he doesn't look that way in Fellowship.
I think, I don't know if this is part of it, but the Lord of the Rings trilogy was shot on film.
Mm-hmm.
And the Hobbit trilogy is digitally shot. And also, this is one of the other things Peter Jackson got criticized for, is he was experimenting with the frame rate of the Hobbit, and it was shot for 48 frames per second instead of the traditional 24. And so, like, the digital stuff, really, you can point out, like, it sticks out like a sore thumb in the Hobbit films. Like, just that CGI B in Desolation of Smog, you're like, why is that CGI B here? Like, it feels out of place.
I did notice that.
The bee was cuter than Legolas's soulless eyes. They're still freaking me out. If you look at like Lord of the Rings, sometimes he has dark brown eyes, sometimes he has lighter blue eyes, and I know, like, I've watched all the making of, and I know that colored contacts are always going to be the most painful stuff you can wear as far as like prosthetics because they're in your eyeballs. But they still looked natural, even if they were like changing back and forth between eye color. Like in Hobbit, he just like that ant that draws her eyebrows on, so she always looks surprised. It's just his face is always like drawn up and staring, and that's part of what makes that Tauriel dwarf Legolas triangle really weird. He just looks like he's stalking her the whole time until like towards the very end where he's like, fine, go be with your dwarf man and I'll just I'll be your friend no matter what.
Yeah.
Fine, I'll stay in the friend zone even though I'm Orlando Bloom.
Yeah, right. He's the prettiest third wheel there is. No, I think that Tauriel and I know it's not Keely. I'm sure it's Feely, but I can never keep them straight. I think their relationship is what gave him that tiny bit more open-mindedness and helps him realize that he is like platonically in love with Gimli. So I stand Tauriel and Feely Keely if it means that Legolas has an easier journey to that relationship because it's a very strong and sweet one eventually. That's it. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay.
I just wanted to bring those two things up.
When did the movie 13 Days come out with Kevin Costner about the JFK?
Oh, that's gotta be late. That's 2000. So you had to have seen that either like around December 2000 or January, February of 01 because
it was
even
December,
though it didn't end up getting any kind of nominations, it was one of those Oscar play movies.
It was December 14th of 2000. I was with three people, and I won't name drop, but we went to Ken's Pizza in Tyler. We had gone to the mall because we were Christmas shopping. This was 2000 now. This is back when you had to
Wait,
go.
this says that it came out in January of 01.
No, because we saw it when we were
But it
Christmas
says
shopping.
2000 at the top.
Yeah. I
Which
saw
one
it.
is it?
I saw it in Tyler at the Rose Theater December 14th because we had gone Christmas shopping. We had gone to the mall because I had, gone to work that day. We had gone to the mall. I remember sitting down and I remember like they had this epic music. The screen went dark, and of course the epic music starts playing, and it's like a slow motion close up of the ring, like just falling. And then you hear the narrator, like, the most epic, the most beloved book of all time, Peter Jackson, yada yada yada. They're coming out, Lord of the Rings, and it shows like these flashes, and I was like,
Because that's all they had to show you.
yeah, I got goosebumps.
Quick little dailies with really good music.
I got goosebumps so bad because, like, the year before we got Star Wars, so I was kind of out of my Star Wars, like, I had it on VHS by now and had my Star Wars fill of Episode 1. So this was like the next big blockbuster, but it was fantasy. And I knew the story, and I was like, holy crap. So they start 13 days, and I don't know if you've seen this movie, but it is long, and it is drawn out, and it is a talky movie. And I just remember falling asleep. This is one of the rare movies that I've actually paid to go see and fallen asleep in. But for the first half of this movie, all I could think about was this trailer, okay? So
you don't even remember 13 days that well?
Yeah, I don't even remember it that well. I just remember falling asleep halfway through it.
I think it's about the Cuban Missile Crisis. And
it is.
Bruce Greenwood plays JFK, and Kevin Costner's like some sort of aide to JFK.
Kevin Costner likes to be in movies about JFK.
Well, yeah, he was in Oliver Stone's movie where they're trying to figure out who killed JFK.
Right. So I get home. It's like maybe almost. It's like 2:30 in the morning because we drive back from Tyler. I have to drop my buddies off. We went to the Late Show, and it was a long ass movie. So it's almost 2:30 in the morning. We live out in the country, so we have dial-up internet. Okay, it's slow as all get out.
Don't laugh about dial-up. Those
I
speeds are coming
get
back.
home. It takes me at least another 30 minutes to log in, pull up this. I go and I find the first teaser page for the Fellowship of the Ring, and all they have on this page is the teaser trailer that I just saw, and I was like, holy crap. So I start downloading it. It finishes sometime during the day. I leave it on and I go to work the next day, and it finishes about the time I get home. It took that long for like a less than a minute teaser. So anyway, I get to watch it. It still buffers and shit. It's horrible, but I still get to watch it again, and I show my dad, and we're just freaking out.
Oh, I bet David had a day.
Oh yeah, because my dad is equally a big a fan. My dad and my uncle are also, because my dad got me into this series when I was little with the Hobbit, so I owe it to him.
Dad's a big reader of fantasy.
Yeah,
novels, like
I should get
Wheel of Time.
I should get him on here for Wheel of Time and get him to watch the show. But anyway, yeah. So man, I geek out, and like all year, I remember Star Wars and this movie were like the first movies that I just remember geeking out really hard over, like just like going to the web pages, visiting the web pages, checking out the news, like everything. I was one of the first subscribers to OneRing.net on the message boards,
Message boards.
Message boards, I know it. But anyway, yeah, I was a huge nut, man, back in 2000, 2001. So
So tell me why you like Fellowship so much more than all the rest of these movies.
oh no. Okay.
Specifically, better than Battle of Five Armies.
Oh man, where to start? Cody, I'm sorry. I just
Let
got
Cody
finished
tell us
talking.
why
Yeah, Cody, you go
Fellowship is
ahead.
his favorite.
Sorry. Cody, you go ahead. I thought she was asking me, and I was about to
I'm
start
asking
guessing.
everybody.
Yeah.
It's a group discussion.
Oh, this movie is it just invites you into the world, and it's so welcoming. And I think it has the most rewatchability for me. Maybe because it's
Mhm.
the shortest of the three of these films. I don't know, or maybe because like we get a few stages of the movie, like we get a little setup of what we're about to get. We got a nice little. We get into the Shire. We're having Bilbo's party. We're meeting the hobbits, all what they do. Then we go on a journey. It's kind of scary. It's exciting. And then we're like, oh, it's a quest. And now we're going to see a bunch of really cool action. And it's just nonstop. Like, and you don't even feel the 3 hours. And even with the extended edition, you don't feel that 3 hour plus running time. And then it's over, and you're like, I gotta wait a year for the next movie. Oh man,
Right.
I was
Oh,
like,
I gotta
oh
go back.
man, yeah, this movie is just so good. I wanna read for whatever reason that everyone must be watching Lord of the Rings, or the internet is like my data is just sending me Lord of the Rings stuff. But I want to read this tweet of somebody talking about watching Lord of the Rings, particularly Fellowship. And then we'll talk more about just how unprecedented this whole. Okay, so I've seen Fellowship of the Ring countless times. I'll just put it on in the background. Me, 2 minutes into the movie. You have my full and undivided attention. Oh, the wizard fight is good, actually. Trying to imagine the other guests at the prancing pony. Hey, can you keep down the screams of the damned? Some of us are trying to sleep.
man.
Watching from right across the road with your face almost pressed against the glass feels like a dangerous thing to be doing. But man, does
Yeah.
Aragorn do it with a pipe in his hand and that like chair?
Oh my gosh,
He
man.
could have just had binoculars and a light on behind him.
You
Oh, he
said
did
Oh,
have a light on
the
behind him.
casting of this movie is phenomenal. I mean, Ian McKellen. Oh, that was another thing. They said Ian McKellen should have gotten the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor as Gandalf.
they
Which,
all should. I'm sorry. I will go ahead and say it. They all should have gotten something, participation trophies or something like.
Well, they are all pretty famous for
Man,
being in Lord of the Rings.
well,
Sean
that's
Astin.
why there
Sean
should be
Astin
a Best
and
Ensemble category.
Mm-hmm.
Sean Astin, both Sean Astin and Ian McKellen should have gotten Oscars. Sean Astin, I'm sorry. It's when we get into the core of these, and I'll probably talk more on it, especially with Return of the King. Everyone will see about how kick-ass and how awesome Samwise Gamgee is, because when it comes down to it, he was
the Lord of the Rings.
he carried Bilbo, Frodo, this entire journey, and literally carried him at the end. So
That's a lot to carry on those
if
shoulders.
it
Sean
hadn't
Astin, good job.
if it hadn't been for Sam, it wouldn't have worked. And that has a lot of weight to that character, even though you don't really see it. But when you look deep, it's about Sam. It's not about Frodo. It's straight up Samwise.
MVP of the trilogy. So I have a question for you. Do you
Mhm.
think Gandalf knew that when he kind of takes Samwise to the side and talks to him privately? Do you think Gandalf knew Frodo's going to need Sam to finish this because Sam is just that good-hearted and loyal of a person that he will look out for Frodo, and he'll also make sure that this gets done.
I think in a way he did, because he already knew that Frodo was. He already knew that hobbits were pure enough to not really.
What can I want from the ring when I already lived my best
Yeah,
life?
like it. Look
I
how
don't
long
wear
it.
shoes.
Look how
or a
look how long it
watch.
took to affect Gollum, and it just took a lot longer for the ring to work its cruel magic on hobbits. So I think he knew that Frodo was going to have enough time, but he also knew that hobbits were some of the purest species to take it and be the bearer of the ring, because he knew that any other species, the dwarves, the elves, and the humans, it would easily corrupt them a lot faster. So I think he knew. I think he knew that he was going to need some extra help. I think he knew that it was going to start wearing on him, and it would probably. Are you there?
Cody disappeared.
Yellow. Anyway, if we're still alive,
make sure Cody doesn't need to get back in.
Yeah. We'll give Cody a few minutes. We're probably live still. I know we are.
We are.
I'm going to take a few drinks, probably get a refill.
I'll talk about my theory. I think that Gandalf saw Bilbo's struggle with the secretiveness of it, that it was really only him who knew about it and who was like accountable for how he used the ring, and thought that that's not going to work.
Right.
You have to have that body double, that partner that's going to keep you in check or accountable.
Right.
There's Cody, maybe.
Yay.
Hey,
Cody.
sorry about that.
No, it's okay. We just kept going. She was going over a theory about
I was answering your question about why, if Gandalf knew, and that's why he sent Samwise.
Yeah, I think it was more of the two hobbits are better than one. Like, I know they're pure,
but they're much stronger when they're together.
Together, yeah. Like he's gonna need companions. He's gonna need some of his own companions. And
he was already seeing the effects of, even though Bilbo had it for, is it 50 or 60 years?
60.
So it's been 60 years since the events of The Hobbit, and he's already seen kind of what it's doing to Bilbo, even though it's taken 60 years.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But Bilbo didn't have to leave the Shire. He had the support of all the hobbits he lived with and around.
Mm-hmm.
And there wasn't any like the stress of travel or or culture shock or anything like that. But he knew Frodo was going to have to deal with a lot more obstacles.
Right.
In bearing it.
For sure. And that's another thing that I did kind of enjoy watching these two films back to back. So at the end of Battle of Five Armies, Bilbo is coming home and they're basically auctioning off everything in his home.
Yeah.
That one relative is still after those dang spoons of his from 60 years ago. She wants those spoons.
Abelia Baggins, or Abelia.
Is it Sack Baggins or something?
Sackful Baggins, yeah.
Yeah.
I love those hobbits, man. That is probably, out of all the series, out of all the trilogies, out of all 6 movies, out of all the sequences and all the different species, the different types of species you get to meet, the hobbits are probably my favorite. All the sequences that it shows in,
they're supposed to be
Hobbiton and the Green Dragon and all the Hobbit holes and
they are distilled and concentrated goodness.
Man, yeah, they just embody everything good and wholesome. Like, You know, it's kind of like Rusk. They're probably you still good, Cody.
Yeah, I'm actually walking, so sorry.
Okay, no worries. So just making sure you're okay. But
I'm
you
on
know,
my
it's probably
phone, so apologies for anyone watching in the picture, but I want to show you guys something, even though it's dark outside,
ooh yeah. Go ahead.
that we have. And I don't know if you'll be able to see it. Sorry, Olaf was sleeping. No, you can't. Maybe I'll bring it inside. I got it for my birthday a couple of years ago, and it's by our door. Can you guys see that?
Nice.
Yes. That is
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yay, that's awesome. I love it.
That is the nicest "Don't knock on my door" sign ever.
Right.
The most politely worded.
Somebody in Jacksonville made that for me.
Oh,
Jessica.
that's awesome. Yeah. Good job.
Jessica got that for me for my birthday like 3 years ago. And every time my mom comes by, she asks what that is, and I explain it to her every time.
It's Lord of the Rings, Mom.
It's not just a face,
Okay,
Mom.
honey, have fun with your dragons and stuff. My mom, hey,
Your Dungeons and Rings, son. You
speaking
go
of
play.
moms, my mom, I drug because I saw this in Tyler, okay, this movie opening night. I was there early, bought my ticket early. This was a big deal for me. This was the biggest Star Wars. But the next night, I took my dad, and my mom decided to go. It was like a big family ordeal. And we got in the car.
Ordeal like taking your family anywhere. It's just a circus.
No, this is back when my mom and we actually went to movies, you know, back in the day. And then they just stopped going. But
that's because your parents have turned into hobbits.
Yeah,
they like being at home.
Hobbits themselves. But I remember my mom. She was like, you know, that was actually kind of fun. That was good. I like that. But I never could get her to go.
Highest mom praise.
Yeah, I was like, all right.
I guess I get it. It's kind of good.
She did help me sew my Lord of the Rings costumes.
Yeah, I thought that's what you were gonna shout her out for, like
for Ren Fair. Yeah,
just straight up outfitting a whole.
She sewed. My sister had a Hobbit dress, like a full-on Hobbit dress, and one of Arwen's dresses that she sewed, and then I made a Ithilien Ranger costume that was like a leather vest, and my dad helped me hand paint the Tree of Gondor on it, and then my mom made the undergarments. So it was a big deal, man. It was big in our household. Like everybody knew what Lord of the Rings was. But anyway, Fellowship of the Ring, man. You were talking about how inviting it is, and how this is one of the most rewatched movies for you. And I have to say it's the same for me. I have many rewatchable movies, but this one, we build a whole month around this. We build a whole month around these 6 movies. If you haven't...
Wait, can we talk about how you and I were married for like 5 or 6 years before I actually got to watch all of the Lord of the Rings? Because it was actually a movie that Christopher would just turn on, but then he would skip to all his favorite parts and explain to me how they made it.
Yeah.
So I never actually watched the movie. The only movie I had seen was The Two Towers, and I got to go to a movie theater to see that for some special occasion.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't remember what year it was, like how far into our marriage we got, when I was like, well, I haven't seen all the Lord of the Rings. And he's like, yes, you have. And I was like, no, I've seen all your favorite parts of Lord of the Rings, but we've never actually watched it.
Oh,
and I think that's when we started. We're like, well, we have to watch it every November.
Right.
And then the Hobbit movies came out, so our marathon got even longer.
Yeah,
great.
and we tailgated those movies too. They were big movies. We would meet up at the theater,
and all our friends would hang out all day.
Yeah,
even though nobody was trying to get in front of us in line because we were there.
Yeah, they were like, "You're weird," and we're like, "We know it, but we're tailgating, guys.
We're first."
But hang on.
Yeah, it's not a thing anymore with online tickets, and not even around here usually. Like,
I know, I miss those days though.
It wasn't cool anymore.
Those were the fun days, back in the cool day where you just sit up there. Hang on just a second. Hey.
Sure. So, yeah, going off topic for a little bit.
Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, good. You're back.
Sorry, I had to pause it just for a second, but anyway, yeah. Oh, talking about being the most rewatched movie. This is the most re-listened to soundtracks for me too. Like all of these soundtracks are amazing. Howard Shore, incredible. Like these movies,
A phenomenal score.
top notch. Every oh, okay. When I talk about these movies, these three movies being the perfect trilogy, I will also go so far as to say these are the perfect soundtracks for these movies too. Like all three of these movies have perfect soundtracks from beginning to end. I mean, they are incredible. Like what I loved is he had someone come in and sing like an end credit song. And he had Enya come in and sing "Let It Be" for Fellowship of the Ring, and my gosh, that song is awesome.
Yeah, just in general, the whole thing is unprecedented, and I don't know if we're ever going to get a film series of this magnitude, not just from a production standpoint, but from an acting and writing and directing. I mean, this not only legitimized the fantasy genre, which had kind of been like the redheaded stepchild of genre films.
Okay.
It also made, well, and I'm not saying that because they were bad. I'm just saying because like they weren't that successful really. Because look at all those 80s films. Those are mostly cult films, right? Most
Right.
of the classic 80s fantasy films. But not only that, but I mean, this is like top notch. Like, this has got to be one of the best adaptations of a novel ever put to film. And I don't know if we're ever going to get anything at this quality because, and I'm kind of glad they've decided like it's better suited as television. But, you know, there's something said about these three films, and that New Line Cinema was like, yeah, we're going to do 3 movies because Peter Jackson was going to do this at Miramax because they had the Weinsteins had produced his film Heavenly Creatures, which was a critical hit, and they were going to do 2 Lord of the Rings movies. And I don't know what happened, but Harvey Weinstein basically said, we can only do 1 movie, so you got to do 1 3-hour movie.
Fun fact about Harvey Weinstein: the Goblin Bold in Return of the King was modeled after Harvey Weinstein. Apparently, he was so hated that
they're like, "Oh, we know where you're going, Harvey."
Yes, he's the one with the hand that was curled up,
right?
Real disfigured.
Is he the one that gets smashed flat by that big thing?
Yeah, well, they launched the chunk of wall at him, and he just sidesteps it, you know. But he gets run in. He gets run in by by the Rohirrim. But anyway, sorry. Go ahead, Cody.
So, anyways, he's like, we can only do 1 movie, and Peter Jackson's like, I can't only do 1 movie. It's got to be at least 2. And he's like, well, I tell you what, you can go to every other studio in town and see if they'll green light you 2 pictures. He goes all over. I forget what the time frame he had to go do this. And he gets the New Line, and whoever he's talking to, I don't know if it's the CEO or the president or whoever, the head of the studio, he's like, isn't there 3 books? Peter Jackson's like, yeah, there's 3 books. It's a trilogy. He's like, well, then why don't we do 3 movies?
That's what any sane person would say. Harvey Weinstein's just a ruiner of all things good.
Man.
But if you guys remember, they had never shot like that many movies together. Like, I know they did the Back to the Future sequels back to back. Like, they shot those pretty close together. But like, they didn't shoot the Star Wars movies that close together.
No, and the only reason the Back to the Future trilogy, the last 2 and 3 got shot together was from the success of the first movie. They didn't have a first movie to go off of. They were gonna, I mean, they were gambling. They were gonna do it all at the same time, so it was a huge gamble.
Well, also in Back to the Future wasn't originally going to be 2 movies, but then they decided that it was just too much to put in one movie. That's why they did 2.
Right.
But yeah, they had no idea it was going to work. You know, they had adapted Lord of the Rings as an animated film in the 70s, and it was a flop. You're on mute.
Sorry. Which, by the way, we're getting an anime, War of the Rohirrim,
Yeah.
this next year, which will be interesting. I'm pretty excited about it. So.
But yeah, the Ralph Bakshi film didn't do well, and I've never seen it, but I hear it ends like in the middle of the 2 towers. So
It does. It ends right up to Helm's Deep, and it's kind of frustrating because I remember getting it. It was during that gap after I had seen the trailer. I went to Hastings and Tyler, rest in peace, Hastings. Spectacles, testicles, wallet, watch. But anyway, I had gone to Hastings and I bought the VHS. I bought the. There were actually 3 VHS, and they had them all. I bought the original Hobbit cartoon, and then I bought Ralph Bakshi's Lord of the Rings, and then I bought the Return of the King from the same animators of the Hobbit. It was in the same kind of,
it's the same style.
That same style. So I had those 3 animated movies. I was rereading the books during that year of nothing but just kind of news that would trickle in on my dial-up internet, and once once a month I would spend a couple of hours and re-download the trailer to watch, but
remember when news trickled in?
Yeah, news
instead of like a constant fire hose straight out of your phone at all hours of the day and night.
Well, I think I read about this being made, and I want to remember that Cinescape magazine did a big issue on this and Harry Potter coming out, because they came out in the same year. And that's what kind of started the fantasy boom, and then like they wanted to adapt everything into a movie. Was off of these 2 film successes.
Yeah, I would get, my dad would save me like newspaper clippings, things that would come out, magazine clippings. He would bring magazines home from work that had little snippets about it and everything. I went out, and I remember in Walmart in the magazine section, I picked this up. This came out about 6 months. I remember picking this up, it was about summertime, 6 months before the movie. Okay. Man, this was the first look at like everything. And me and my dad both like wore this thing out, rereading it, looking at the pictures. Like, man, we couldn't take it. Like, it was just, we were both just so anxious for this movie to come out. Thank you, man. Mm-hmm. But I don't know if movie magazines still big. I don't know with internet.
Well, Fangoria is exclusively still just a magazine, so that's still around.
I know a lot of things on digital, but
well, they probably have a digital version, but I mean, like, they don't have a website. It's Fangoria, and Empire Magazine is still a big deal, but nowhere near as much as they used to be.
I remember I would get a lot of movie magazines that would have posters in it, like fold out posters and just really cool stuff. Like I kept my Bram Stoker's Dracula movie like making of book, and I've got a lot of making of books, but I remember Lord of the Rings just really standing out because
The scale of that production was just bananas.
It's unprecedented. I've said it already, but it is, and I mean, like, just that they pulled it off, and not only did they pull it off, it is one of the quintessential landmark films in cinema history, just for what they were able to accomplish, and not only that they accomplished it, but it's one of the best films ever made. All three of these movies.
Yeah, and I was going to talk to you about. We mentioned how everything was shot in 4K with The Hobbit, right? It was the digital shooting and everything. Going back and watching the Fellowship of the Ring, the CGI, to me, which is 20 years old, holds up better than the CGI from The Hobbit, in my opinion.
Well, for sure, totally, because really, it's shot on film. I'm not saying everything has to be shot on film, but they only use the CGI where it was needed. And I mean, look, the effect of Gollum, though we don't really get to see it too much in this film, we see it more in the next two. It kind of, ushered in a new era of special effects. Like, you wouldn't have Avatar, you wouldn't have so many things without the performance.
Actually, I think that credit goes to Ahmad Best, Jar Jar. I know a lot of people do not want to hear that, and those people can go
fly a kite.
But and you know what? Maybe he wasn't the greatest character, but what he did for mocap and what they did for that, and the technology that they used and experimenting with it, and it was brave. It was brave doing that. They didn't have to do that, but they did. They went there, but that man catches a lot of crap, and I think a lot of that credit should go to Ahmad Best, although they did it better with Gollum. They did it much better with Gollum.
I'll say this. What they used with Jar Jar Binks was rough, but it crawled where Andy Serkis and his amazing ability as a performer and being able to play off that so it could walk.
Walk, yeah. Well, he ran in that. I mean,
Well, for sure.
They stood up. They didn't walk. They just stood up immediately. It was like, oh man, I can stand up.
And he is a prime example of these type of performances are acting. Yeah. Not only his work as Gollum, but his work as Caesar in the Planet of the Apes movies too. It's just it's just undone. But there would
the throwaway character
and Peter Jackson's production company becomes one of the go-to special effects companies now. Like, they're doing stuff for all kinds of movies.
I read just today where he sold Way to Digital.
What?
Oh, really?
Where for some 3.1 billion, 3.11 billion or something like that.
Oh.
I've got to do more research. I just saw one thing on it, so don't quote me on that. It was for a lot of money. It could have been fake. I don't know. I've got to go back and try to look it up and read it. But I saw it and I was like, holy crap, I can't believe he'd do that. But I mean, who wouldn't want to be set up for life?
Exactly.
I mean, whatever. His business.
Billion with a B.
Yeah.
Yep.
But what else do I want to gush about this movie? Man, everything.
don't these movies make you want to put a cloak on and like tie some cheese and bread and apples into a knapsack and just like head off into the woods?
Man, yeah.
For sure.
And never come home.
I think that's why we watch them in November, because it is fall and it's chilly outside, or it's supposed to be. And
we got the air conditioning on right now.
Yeah. And you know, the leaves are falling and it's time for fires outside, and it's just so nice because I watched them.
It's the time of year that you get to act most like a hobbit, because everybody's like, oh, parties, drinking, eating,
yeah, you know,
merrymaking.
And I remember these come around every December for 3 years. That was my big deal.
Mm-hmm.
I actually worked at the Jacksonville Theater for the third movie, and I'll get into that because we got to decorate and everything. It was amazing. But these were big deals, man. These were along the lines of Star Wars for me. These were really big deals when it came to the theater in my life. Like as far as watching movies and films go, like these had some of the most impact in my film life, I guess, if that makes sense.
I mean, for sure, we're never going to see something like this again, and we never saw anything like it when it came out. I do want to talk about a few more things where we finish.
No, go ahead. I could talk for another 3 hours, but I mean, I know we can't.
One, I want to get your guys' opinions on some of the Tolkien family not being a fan of this, because I'm like, you couldn't ask for a better adaptation of these novels. So I'm wondering what their beef is with these movies, because I can't think of how better of a job they could have done with this.
If you gave Stephen Colbert enough money, you could get all of the books in some film format.
Right.
Eventually. Because he is like...
He's a super fan.
I love watching
scholar,
Colbert discuss Tolkien. Like, it's funny, but...
Oh, it's fun watching somebody geek out about something that you feel just as strongly about. And I love learning things about it.
He made a mistake on air one time, and I tried to get in touch with his people or whatever, and I was like, hey, he made this mistake on air, and I don't know if anybody else caught it, but it's supposed to be this. And I never heard anything back. So
I saw that email the other day in my archive stuff.
I can't remember what it was about, but it was some
revisiting of the Hobbit films when he got to go to New Zealand.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the only way you'd get a better adaptation. And I don't really have any feelings about like family members or members of the estate not being happy with the film adaptations, just because.
Well, his grandson had a cameo in the film, Roy Tolkien.
Well, good for him.
He was a ranger in Return of the King, I believe.
Cool.
That's the thing when you are an artist in author form specifically, like any form of art, you don't get to decide what other people's interpretation of your art is. And now I know that, I mean, obviously when he was still alive, he could voice his opinion about other people's interpretations or analyses of his works. But once it's out there.
We almost got the Beatles as the Hobbits.
We did. Yeah, we did.
We'll leave it at that. I mean, it could have been so much worse.
Could have been worse, Tolkien.
I
just think that there's an ownership on the part of the person who created it, and there's a kinship on the part of the people who appreciate the works and fans of the work.
Right.
And I don't think that the fans get to tell the creator how they should have done things, and I don't think that the creator gets to tell fans or how they should feel about their works. I think that they're separate relationships with the same piece or pieces. So, I mean, other than like not getting paid royalties or something, I don't know what family members would have wanted to be better about it. Because I feel like when you watch the behind the scenes, especially, you can tell every single person who works on these does it just with their whole hearts and minds and bodies. Like everybody seems to be super passionate about it. Even the worst parts of being an actor or a grip or a sound person or so and so on such a big project, and like the pressure, they're all like, oh, it's worth it. Look what we did. We did this. We made this together. And isn't it beautiful?
Yeah, I think he treated it. He had such respect for it. Like even with the changes that he made, they were still in a way they were still respectful changes. Like I don't think they were made.
It wasn't a reckless artistic license he took.
It was just like, man, I've got to do my best to translate this for the masses and to make it coherent. Because when you look, those books are tough reads. I don't know if you've tried to read them. I
haven't read them in a long time, but yeah, I've read them. I mean, after I watched this movie, I was like, well, I got to read these books. I had read The Hobbit, but I was like, man, I got to read these books. But yeah, they're not easy reads. They're not like, oh, I'll breeze right through these.
Because yeah, okay. Lindsay said they're like history books.
It's like history books and the Bible, like all thrown together.
This trilogy, you know what I would do? I would watch these movies, and I would have like the Tolkien dictionary. And if I heard a name, an elven name, or them reference something that I didn't know anything about, I would pause it.
Oh,
you okay?
Sorry. Yeah.
It's our fan. I would pause it and I would look it up in the dictionary so I could understand it. This is the first movie that it was a. This is the first fantasy movie that made it feel real, like it had a real history. There's so much involved and backstory to this. Okay, we're talking about
building.
We're talking about the Fellowship of the Ring. You could take the Fellowship of the Ring, not any of the other two movies. Okay, not the Two Towers, not Return of the King. You could take Fellowship and dig so deep it would keep you busy for months. Names, places, history, family lineages. I mean, it's insane the depth that this goes. And when you get into that, it makes it even more personal. Like it makes it even more like, wow. Like these are just amazing stories. Like, okay, the Watchtower of Amansun. Did you know that was a place that held one of the seeing stones, one of the Palantiri that they stopped at? Remember the first place that they got attacked by the ring wraiths?
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's every place that they stop at, all those ruins that you see in the background have a history to it. You know, it's not just scenery. All those places, the names, like everything. If you hear something, you more than likely you could go look it up, and there's a whole history to that, and it's insane. And that's one of the reasons why I love this, because it's like an ancient mythological history that could have happened, and because of the depth. And I'll stop gushing.
Well, the other thing I want to talk about is some other the performances and casting. So what's interesting is Viggo Mortensen, who I think is amazing as Aragorn, was not even the original actor who was going to play him. Did you know they had a different actor?
Yes, they had actually started filming, and he just decided he couldn't do it, and he's just like, nope, I can't.
Well, I heard they had cast Stuart Townsend, but they were like, he's not giving what we need from this character. Nothing against him, but we need someone a little bit older. We need someone who has like this look like they've been through some things and like they've like they've like the world has treated them roughly, like they're carrying something.
The way
Because
that Viggo Mortensen looks like a feral barn cat.
yeah.
Vigo is somewhat hippie. Like,
Oh, for sure.
He is an outdoorsman. He's a fisherman. He's down to earth. He rides horses. He owns horses. He farms. He's very like.
It's funny that you think he's a hippie because he comes off
Commune.
very type A to me.
I don't know. He speaks.
He has the same thing that Richard Armitage has, that need to be whatever we're doing and just going to casually be the best at it.
Yeah, like, well,
maybe that's just leading man energy that I'm trying to put a different name on, but
I don't know.
I'm not dissing on him. I'm just saying
he didn't have Richard Armitage vibes to me. He just came across as a very easygoing.
I'm gonna say this: The Hobbit was the same formula used for Lord of the Rings, and we all didn't vibe with it as well because it was a different cast. It's like I'm trying to figure out a better metaphor for it. It's like, your original cast, your first love of Middle Earth. It's all these faces and these performances and these energies, and the movies are formulaically the same, but there's different faces,
right?
And there's different technologies trying to be used and implemented that make it feel just a little bit off.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of parallel moments that are purposefully, created that they mirror each other from Lord of the Rings to The Hobbit. And I should be taking better notes about which scenes exactly this are. I'll try to do that for the next two movies. But yeah, it had already been done before, and it had been done so beautifully that when The Hobbit came around, you were like, nah.
I think
story plot holes and things like that.
Well, yeah, because when you saw Lord of the Rings, you're like, oh my God. Like, like they just created a whole world and wow, it's beautiful. And then you're like, I've already seen this. Yeah, it's whatever. Yeah. Mini Vigo's not as hot as regular Vigo, and
he seems angrier for some reason.
It's kind of like okay, I've been there and done that. I'm just here for the story now. Like,
yeah,
I've seen the background. I'm just here for the story. Let's do it.
And I do think the Hobbit films are weaker, but I think you do have a point, Lindsay, that I think because we're already invested, we already saw all that, like we're pointing out like the stuff that we probably wouldn't have been pointing out had we seen the Hobbits first.
Right. Well, and I think you were talking about how he was like experimenting with frame rate, and everything was being shot for like 3D at the same time that it was going to be shot for like theatrical release on Blu-ray or whatever.
Yeah, we saw the second one 3D,
and all those newer TVs that came out, that was the look. It was like hyper realistic to the point where it was like
off-putting.
Yes, like the uncanny valley effect almost.
My parents have a TV that's like that it's just so hyper realistic that it's just off-putting almost.
Well, you can change it in the settings.
Yeah, you can fix it now, but I remember at the time that's what was coming out and was being advertised for all those slick new flat screens, and it was like turning fluorescent lighting on a scene that's better lit by candlelight for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's called motion smoothing, and to me it always feels like I'm watching a movie that's being presented by someone's digital camera of their home movies.
Yes.
And I'm like, I feel like I'm not in the movie now.
Yeah, it's taking me out of the story the way everything is moving around on screen.
But I hear the 4K versions of The Hobbit actually look really well.
Ooh, yeah, I'm in several groups, and people are definitely raving about that, and that's on my bucket list. I really, really want the 4K versions of The Lord of the Rings. Like, I want that set. There's a 36 disc set version of.
Jesus.
Yes, it is absolutely everything.
It's the Bible of
It is massive.
Middle-earth movie
Yeah,
making.
it's I want it badly. It's a pretty impressive set.
But there's a few other people I want to point out that I think do really good work in this movie. I think Sean Bean is really great in this film as playing a conflicted person as Boromir.
Yeah.
I think he brings the gravitas and the turmoil that's going on with this guy, that he is a hero. He is like kind of the chosen son, but like he is corrupted by the temptation of the ring. And I think he does a really good job of playing someone who can be villainous, but really at the core is a good person. He just gives him.
That was the whole point. Was Boromir was a good person deep down. It was the ring that corrupted him.
And then we get possibly the largest man in the cast to play one of the smallest people. But Jonathan Rhys Davies is amazing. And
Yeah.
I know he's thankful for this role because I remember watching an interview with him talking about, like, you know, he's been an actor for I forget how many decades. And he's like, I'm a lucky man that I have this and Indiana Jones, and I was in a James Bond movie, and he named like 4 or 5. He's like, I have at least 5 iconic roles in my career. What can an actor ask for?
I loved him from Sliders too. I know maybe a lot of people may not, get that.
Nerd.
Yeah, I loved Sliders. Okay, I loved him in Sliders.
Naming these obscure 90s shows.
What about the Adventures of Briscoe County Jr., huh?
Well, hey, that show rocks, but it's Bruce Campbell.
Yeah, that show did rock. What about Jack of All Trades, huh?
I didn't watch that one, but I remember
it was okay. It was all right.
Seeing that.
Not as good as Briscoe County Jr., but
I mean, those are the standouts. We already talked about Ian McKellen. He's great. Oh
yeah.
Hugo
he
Weaving.
Is Gandalf to me. I'm sorry.
Hugo Weaving looks exactly like the animated Elrond from the animated movies.
Yeah, he does. And good for him, because he had not only Agent Smith but Elrond like at the same time.
Hugo Weaving just
Man, he was
in
on
general because he hasn't aged between this trilogy of Middle Earth movies and the Hobbit trilogy.
2 massive franchises. Like, that dude's set.
And he's not coming back for the new Matrix, though.
That's what I heard. He and Lawrence Fishburne are not gonna come back.
Well, Lawrence Fishburne's character is supposed to be dead, isn't he?
Well,
no, it's being played by a different actor. I have a theory. I didn't want to get on the Matrix thing, but I have a theory about, and I could be wrong, but I have a theory that it's another version of Neo, because there's been different versions of him.
Yeah, it's gonna be a different version. I'm with you on that.
And that's why Morpheus looks different.
Well, in December we got a lot of we watch a lot of Christmas movies all December, like Die Hard and Lethal Weapon and Rambo and stuff like that. Those are our Christmas movies. But we are definitely going to rewatch the Matrix movies in preparation for the new Matrix, because I'm pretty excited about seeing that and how it's going to turn out.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited. I'm a sequel defender. I'm actually a Wachowski's defender in general of their movies.
Ooh, I liked all 3 of those movies.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of who else really stands out. But yeah, Ian McKellen is Gandalf. I mean, who hasn't done the forgetting Sarah Marshall thing where you're at home by yourself in your sweatpants and you yell, "You shall not pass." I mean, who hasn't done that?
Sweatpants. I'm completely naked. What are you talking about?
Sweatpants are for people with responsibilities.
You shall not pass. So then my little wiener dog's looking up at me like, God damn
No,
idiot.
you're
Like,
snoring and ignoring you.
yeah, like, ooh, my human's gross. Put some
how
pants
about-
on, man.
How about it's Liv Tyler, right?
Oh, Liv Tyler as Arwen. Yeah.
Woo!
Beautiful Arwen voice that is so deep and not a scary Batman voice at all.
But you know what? I'm okay with her character because she's an actual character. He just moved
Yep.
her around.
Well, and fleshed her out more.
Yeah, and it
First
fleshed her
elf
out more.
lady, that's the only thing. It's just
Yeah,
who
she was a
first.
hot elf lady too. I'll give her that. But anyway,
She was gorgeous.
yeah,
Is gorgeous. Gosh, she doesn't age either.
Who doesn't age?
I got Lindsay the necklace for Christmas. I think it was when we watched was it the first Hobbit movie?
It was when the first Hobbit movie came out. Yes, because
Yeah.
we had a very small.
Aw.
Yeah, I got her that necklace and
the jewelry box.
the jewelry box. Yeah, they came out with an elven jewelry box that I picked up for her. But anyway,
I love that Gimli's all as a dwarf. Like, I guess dwarves think elves are like snobs. Like, they think they're better than them, so that's why the dwarves don't like them. But I think it's funny when they meet Galadriel and he just falls in love. He's like, "Oh, you're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. I just want a hair on your head. I don't want any special weapon or rope or special bread that fills me up with one bite."
Yep. There's
He's just smitten.
There's a story in the Lost Tales where she meets up with him again after she crosses into the Undying Lands, or actually he crosses into the Undying Lands. No, he does. He goes first.
It's just anybody going to the. It's just like a matter of getting on a boat.
You
got to be invited.
It's select people. Yeah, you have to be invited.
That sounds pretty
and because
elitist of their version of
well,
heaven.
because they played such an integral part in saving Middle Earth, they were invited to the Undying Lands with the elves and whatnot, which is really sweet. But
so why did Bilbo get to go?
What's that?
I mean, I guess we'll get to that when we get to Return of the King. I guess.
Yeah, we'll get to that when we get to Return of the King. Why Bilbo gets to go? Because he found the ring and
he didn't go.
He gave it up. Yeah, he gave it up to his nephew, and his nephew carried it, and along with everyone else who was involved that actually got it, helped it along the way and everything. But and we'll get to that. But my gosh, go ahead.
I guess we got to talk about Christopher Lee too, who didn't want to play this role. I think he wanted to play a good guy, and Peter Jackson's like, "Yeah, but I need you to do the Christopher Lee thing because you're Christopher Lee."
He has. I saw an interview. He has read it. He has read The Lord of the Rings at least once a year since the mid 50s, since it first came out. He is the only actor out of the group to actually have met
Tolkien.
And killed a man that we know.
And killed a man, yeah.
That's an interesting parallel of, because Christopher Lee was in an elite, cohort division in World War II. Mm-hmm. Tolkien wrote this trilogy as a response to World War II.
Right. Yeah, there's lots of parallels with the
because he was a World War I vet, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then his son, did he lose his son, or his son went to World War II? So because
Christopher Tolkien, Christopher Tolkien put out a lot of his like the Silmarillion and
all his unfinished stuff. I didn't know if he had more than one son.
Yeah, I can't remember that either. So, Lindsay, our researcher will look it up.
but I know, like, especially people who lived through World War One, and the World War One, we were supposed to sign the Treaty of Paris. It was going to be the end of wars. We're never going to go to war again. And just, in a matter of 25 years, we're having it all over again.
Right.
And just the devastation of what that war did for people.
I know. I remember watching or kind of reading into it, and like the orcs, when Sauron decides to, he's building the army Saruman is building the army for Sauron, and he's cutting everything down around Orthanc, and they're building steel armor and weapons and stuff like that. I read where that was supposed to represent industrialization.
Yeah.
And it's what drives out the magic of the
right.
To answer your question from earlier, Tolkien has 4 children: Christopher, Priscilla, Michael, and John Francis.
Okay.
Oh wow.
He actually has
John
3 sons and 1 daughter.
John Francis, that's a very Catholic name.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, look, we have talked about this movie. We have gushed over it. I mean, we have all agreed that this is basically the most perfect trilogy in motion picture history, and I will die on that hill.
Well, I'll tell you why again. I think because they had the 3 books, they shot these all together. Peter Jackson, Fran Walsh, Philippa Boyens, or however you say her name, they mapped this out. They had it planned out. They knew how they were going to do this, and it just flows thematically. Each film is of equal quality. Like, it doesn't dip. Most other trilogies or film franchises, the quality strains. Even in the original Star Wars trilogy, there is even if you are a die on the hill, say Return of the Jedi is one of your favorite or your favorite Star Wars movie, you have to admit that it is a little bit weaker of a movie.
Empire is the strongest movie in that trilogy. Sorry, but go ahead.
Hands down, but I'm just saying there are people that love Jedi.
Right.
But you have to agree that film is weaker than the first 2 films to some degree. Like, there are parts of things Lucas insistent had to be in there that don't make it as thematically strong as those first 2 Star Wars movies are. And that's not in this Lord of the Rings trilogy. Like, top to bottom, from beginning to end, you could almost say it's one whole movie, but they are 3 separate films.
And we'll get into that next week, because we're going to 2 Towers and Return of the King.
But one final thing before we end tonight. My favorite thing about when Fellowship came out is they would be like, when the advertisement and trailers, directed by Peter Jackson. And like, nobody knew who Peter Jackson was really till this movie. I mean, if you were a hipster before hipster was a term, like knew his earlier films, then maybe, or you were from New Zealand, then you knew who he was. But most people didn't know who he was. Like, I didn't know who he was, and I had already seen The Frighteners. And I was like, oh, he did that movie?
Yep.
What a very interesting choice to make the Middle-earth trilogy.
Yeah, it was a shock. It was. And
well, I remember the execs at New Line, when they were screening the movie, they had put up posters of all of Peter Jackson's movies. And besides Heavenly Creatures, they're all kind of schlocky films. They're like culty, low-budget, B-grade horror / slapstick movies.
Yeah.
And they said they were a little nervous. They're like, "Oh my goodness!" And then they watch the movie and they're like, "Oh, yeah, you did it."
Whew,
Yeah.
good job. Here's lots
It
of money.
it is absolutely, and I think by the time we review Two Towers and Return of the King, I really hope we can convey how much of a perfect trilogy this is. And
Well,
I hope it's not just us, because I know there's a lot more
Yeah,
people
this
out
is as
there,
close
but
to like proselytizing as I can get. I
yeah,
feel like I'm not doing a good job of imparting how great these are to watch and why we rewatch them every year.
I mean, yeah,
I think part of it it's just, it was a beloved franchise before it became film. I mean, these books were huge in the 50s and 60s. I mean, Led Zeppelin wrote countless songs about them.
yes.
And then they make these movies, and not only do they make them impeccable. These are like I said, this has got to be up there as one of the best adaptations put to screen.
And they left Tom Bombadil out of this, but that's perfectly
Oh my
fine
god!
with me.
Yes, it's okay. Please don't come at us, Tom Bombadil fans. Like, it's okay that it's not in the movie.
It's okay. They left out the Barrow Whites, but it's okay. Like he makes it okay. He made it okay.
But here's the other thing, and you mentioned it. They also had to make these movies accessible for people who don't know a darn thing about Middle Earth.
Right. And that's why it's okay. Like he makes it okay for people who didn't know about Middle Earth. And it's okay. Like it's fine. He made it in such a way that it wasn't blasphemous. It was fine.
Tom Bombadil still exists.
Yeah, Tom Bombadil still
He's still
exists.
He's in the book, guys. It's okay. You can go read the
Yeah.
book, listen to it on an audiobook. Tom Bombadil's there. We don't need like your justice for Tom Bombadil.
Tom Bombadil don't need no
Yeah.
justice. He's doing just fine.
But look, listen, guys. We're gonna go ahead and wrap this up because I could go all
because
night.
we can keep going and we've got 2 whole more movies to
Yeah,
watch.
next Wednesday is gonna be Two Towers and Return of the King. Oh my gosh, I'm excited. I don't know if I can wait. We'll probably start watching them over the weekend. But please watch these. I highly recommend them. If you haven't watched them, surely I'm pretty sure that most of our audience, most of the people who pay attention to us, have watched these movies. But if for some chance, if there is one person out there who hasn't, please watch these movies because they are truly the. If you don't care for fantasy at all, these movies will make you care for fantasy. Like these movies will ease you into fantasy in such a way that you will enjoy it. It won't be in your face. It won't be a bunch of magic. It won't be a bunch of,
It's not.
It's, I don't know. I just highly recommend it.
It's not bippity boppity fantasy. It's not like big flashy stuff.
Yeah, it's soothing in a way. It's calming. It'll make you cry. It'll make you laugh.
If you want to know why Game of Thrones exists as a television show, it's because of the success of this film series.
And look,
Game of Thrones could never.
Listen,
never.
Speaking of Game of Thrones, I watched Game of Thrones. Okay, I've seen it. I've seen all of it. I thought there were parts that were good. I thought there were parts that were not good. But the whole time, and I know maybe I shouldn't be this way because this is when I see any type of fantasy movie, I compare it to Lord of the Rings. And that's probably not good because Lord of the Rings.
That's like talking about all your exes at the first.
Yeah, Lord of the Rings set the standard.
But
No,
you can see
really.
what I mean about it being your first, like the first big whoa, yeah, that's a thing I love and it's done well right there.
And get this.
There's no way,
Lord,
as cute as Martin Freeman is, as much as you want to put him in your pocket and you know raise a dragon or something, it just was never gonna stand up. It wasn't.
I'm gonna sound like an old codger here, okay?
Well, you are rather.
I'm getting gray in there.
Up here.
I'm getting glittery, but okay. So Lord of the Rings didn't. It doesn't have to have nudity. It doesn't have to have language. It has the stylized. It has the fantasy violence, okay, which is fine. It's not too gory. It didn't need all that to tell an outstanding, absolutely fantastic story.
It didn't need shock value on its side.
And
I'm not saying anything about nudity, good or bad. So
and I'm gonna save this for Return of the King, but I think it shows a real I think it shows a healthy portrayal of masculinity
and strength and leadership.
Yeah. I think Aragorn has a pretty good stance on what masculinity should be.
I would agree. And I'm also going to say Academy Awards, you should have gave Fellowship and Two Towers also Best Picture.
All 3 years, they should have cleaned house. They should have cleaned house.
Nothing against The Beautiful Mind. It's a really well-made movie, but
I like that movie. I like
they're
that
not
movie.
having 20th anniversary retrospective screenings of A Beautiful Mind. Russell Crowe is not going to conventions talking. Of course, it's not the type of movie they have conventions about, but I'm just saying. And
I actually read the biography on Stephen Nash and the mathematician that he is based off of, and the real Stephen Nash actually saw aliens.
Oh man, why wasn't that in the movie?
It was a lot wilder than what he portrayed in the movie. I think he wanted
to aliens or angels.
No, they were aliens.
Because he was a math nerd.
Because he was a mathematician. Yes,
that makes sense.
If
he's been bad at math,
it's very interesting, and he and his wife were killed in a taxi accident on the way to a conference that he was going to speak at.
Oh, that's terrible.
In the DC area. Yeah, that was earlier in the aughts, I believe, or around 2013, 14, I believe. I remember seeing that and feeling really bad about it, but
and then you look at the other films that were up that year. Of course, Moulin Rouge, you kind of brought the musical back. In the Bedroom is a really well-structured 3-act movie. I highly recommend it. And Gosford Park's a lot of fun, too. It's like a fun little murder mystery with a lot of really good British actors.
Yeah,
but of these 5 films, I mean, it should have been just because of the achievement it made in filmmaking, in film history, and that we're still talking about it 20 years later. And
it got it got a prequel. It got a whole set. It got a whole trilogy made.
Yeah, I mean, and plus it just seems stupid to give the third movie an Oscar and not the first 2. Like Godfather 2 didn't win Best Picture and Godfather 1 didn't. Like they both won Best Picture. So why didn't Lord of the Rings win Best Picture? All 3 years.
Right.
That's my final 2 cents for the night. I'm just saying.
I think I look again. I will say this, and I will continue saying this. I will say it next week,
and the week after that,
and the week after, and you'll probably get tired of it if you have not seen these movies. First of all, shame on you.
Oh no.
Second,
don't shame people for having seen something yet.
You know what? I'm sorry, Cody.
No shame on you, Mr. Fast Forward to the best parts. No.
It's the ale that's talking. I'm sorry. I'm so passionate about these
He's
movies.
excited for you to have the opportunity to see them for the first time because, goodness, what a treat.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And if you
Yeah.
watch them for the first time, please come and talk to me. Please. If you want to talk, if you want to chat, if you want to talk about these movies,
If you want to argue about them,
if you want to argue about them, if you want to get on here, and go live, I will talk to you about these movies. If it is your first time, if you are a Tolkien version and you are just now watching these movies and you are hopefully as amazed about them as I was, I will talk to you about these movies. I promise you.
If you like fantasy, I'm going to recommend this even if you don't like fantasy, because I
Yeah.
think these three films will be the exception to the rule just because of how well done they're made.
Mhm.
But if you're a fantasy fan who has not seen this yet, you got to do it. I mean, it's just something you should see. And it's also one of the finest collection of films ever made.
Mhm.
And yeah, I agree. It's probably the best film trilogy.
Yes.
and Hobbits are the OG cottagecore, which is a big
Yeah.
thing now. So like you got to at least watch Fellowship to get that fix of like how
Oh, yeah.
wholesome and delightful Hobbit life is.
This will make you want to break out the food, the snacks, the ale, and the pipe weed.
It'll
And
make you want to go to a
man.
Renfest. It'll make you want to go.
Man, I so wanted just a giant block of cheese after watching this movie, looking at Bilbo's kitchen.
Hey, you let me know when we can watch these out, like in the park somewhere, and we will get together and do that. I'll bring my
We'll make
projector
meat
and
pies.
the screen, and we will
Meat pies and
we'll go at
Renfest
it.
bread.
It'll be
We
fun.
We'll do an
Anyway.
adult Lunchable with a charcuterie board.
Yeah, with some wine.
Hobbit
Man, that'll be
cutery.
fun. Wine and some ale. That'd be great. But I'm always down for that. Anyway, all right, guys. Look, we're going to let you go. Cody, thank you for joining me. I know you're probably tired after work, but
We can't see you, but we know you're yawning. It's
Yeah.
time for bed.
Yeah, my camera froze, so I'm glad the audio's still working.
It's okay. It's okay. Guys, if anybody was listening or if you listen later, thank you so much for listening and joining us to talk about Lord of the Rings, because we could go on forever, but we're going to call it. Next Wednesday, we're going to be talking, Two Towers and Return of the King.
Yeah, we're closing the trilogy. We're closing all of Middle Earth and doing the last two films.
Yes, but you know what? I've got so much to talk about those two movies, and especially about Sam, but we'll get into that later. Thank you for listening and joining us tonight and drinking if you chose to drink some. I guess we will catch you next Wednesday.
Yep, and tune in Friday night for Hellboy 2.
Yes. What time Friday night, Cody?
It's going to be a little late, not quite as late as these shows, but our guest said if we could do 10 p.m., that's when we're going to be talking at.
Okay, cool. Well, I guess Lindsay and I are going to be watching Hellboy at some point real soon. Hellboy 2. Yeah.
And just keep up with the fantasy vibes we've been doing. You know, we watched Pan's Labyrinth, we're watching Lord of the Rings, and now we're going to watch Hellboy 2.
Yeah. It's that time of the year. It for some reason
it's the magic
melds,
time of the year. If you aren't doing spooky is magic, and then cheery merry is magic, thankfulness is magic. That's why everybody loves this time of year. We're ready for that magic.
Yep. I still believe in Santa too, so there's the Santa magic.
Do you believe in the Santa that brings you gifts, or do you believe in the evil Santa who punishes naughty people?
It depends.
I believe in necromancer Santa who saved those children from that brine barrel.
Right. It depends on what mood I'm in. But
do you guys ever watched Futurama where they had the robot Santa?
No, I remember what you're talking about, but Lindsay and I need to watch Futurama.
I haven't seen much of Futurama.
Well, there's a Christmas episode where the robot Santa's evil, and he's like, "You've all been naughty, except for you." I forget the Zoidberg. You were a very good boy this year. Here's your present.
Nice. All right, guys. Well, thank you for joining us, and thank you for jigging along with us. And yeah. Wait,
All right.
Okay. All right. Okay. I guess we'll see you next week.
Good night.
Bye.
Oh yay! I can't end it. I gotta try and end this. Hold on.
Oh no.
Just say random things.
La la la.
Random things.
Random things. Bert and Ernie would kick the crap out of Ted Cruz for Big Bird.
Yeah, what's with the Republicans like bad mouthing Sesame Street?
I don't know, man.
Because they get all up in their feelings, thinking they could take Big Bird, forgetting he's like 8 feet tall.
Like,
oh look, here I am again, and I can hear myself echoing because of my phone.
whoa, 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 whoa.
There's 2 Codys.
There's 2 Codys.
One is an imposter.
Cody.
Okay, I removed my other one. All right, guys, we're gonna end this. Thanks for watching our nearly 2-hour episode on Middle Earth. I don't know how long our next one's gonna go.
We got about 30 minutes of Battle of 5 Armies in the 45 minutes.
I don't even think we did 30 minutes. I think we did like 20 to 25, and then we're like, all right.
Lord of the Rings is just so good, though.
Right.
It's okay,
Good
guys.
night.
Next week, even better. Good night, guys.